Welcome back to Between Two Racks with the Kilo Crew. This week's episode, we're going to discuss work capacity. So let's kick it. Work capacity. I know we've mentioned this a few times on podcast episodes, and it's something that we feel a lot of trainees are now lacking in the weight room. We see it with online clients. We see it kind of as a whole when people are training with us. It just seems people are no longer developing work capacity within their training. So before we dive into why this is an issue, why it became an issue, I want everyone to understand what work capacity is. For me, I know I won't be the sciencey one, but for me, work capacity is just the ability to handle more volume in the weight room. I know that's kind of like a basic. Is it somewhat correct in terms of what work capacity would be?
Yeah, so to handle volume and being able to repeat work over and over and over and over and like recover from it.
Yes, because recovery is part of work capacity.
Yeah, because you can near break work capacity into a long term and a short term outlook. So the long term is, can you handle a lot of volume load, so sets, reps times weight over the course of a training week, meso, macro, etc. Or it could be within the training session, that how much can you actually do within a set period of time. So both are variations of work capacity, but once you go about trying to increase work capacity, both elements should be like rising at the same time to a certain extent.
One thing, I just want to discuss something before we start. And the reason why I brought up the topic of work capacity for a podcast is I just feel that it's flagrant right now, at least with the clientele I work with, how bad work capacity is compared to just 10 years, 15 years ago for me. And what's complicated with these types of statements now is we all live in our own little bubble. So I don't know if it's necessarily
yeah, probably not.
a trend across the entire strength training industry. I don't follow
CrossFit
or know enough CrossFitters to know that for a fact. Nick Dampierre, for example, an old client of mine, he seems to be doing fine work capacity wise. So I'm not here to talk about every modality of training in the strength world, but at least in my little bubble, it seemed like it disappeared.
And one of the issues with just talking about work capacity in terms of people's training ability is it's so tightly linked with your recoverability that outside lifestyle factors plays a huge role in somewhat how it is displayed. So if someone's not recovering between sessions, so you're thinking their work capacity is not good enough, but it's actually outside stressors in terms of their sleep shit, they're just stressed with work or something like that, that could be a false indication that they don't have a good work capacity. It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle stressor that's really causing the issue. So it's a little bit muddy
and
in
limiting recovery to be able to express work capacity that they may have, but certain variables are just...
Yeah, but it's tricky because like Pork said, there's a long-term and a short-term aspect to work capacity. Yeah. So the recovery has a huge long-term connotation. I'm not saying it has zero impact on the short-term capacity, because the better recovered you are, the more output you can generate. I understand that, but I also think that there might be some type of mental component to it as well.
Yeah. I think even when we started with Gen Pop, it was always a thing where, they would come in, they'd train hard, we could really push them hard. But yeah, in the last 10, 15 years, even Gen Pop can't even sustain that type of training. Their stress levels are really high. Like you said, all the lifestyle things where they're not sleeping, they're not eating properly. There's a lot more toxins in the environment. All those things, if you really want to dive deep, I think that definitely affects the...
But me, why I brought this up is because it's a marked change that I've seen. Yep. And I'm going to talk because, obviously, since we moved to California, to Florida, like all of our clients are online, so I can only talk about this. But me, I don't even need to go back 10, 15 years. I only need to go back 5 years. Like the difference in work capacity from my online clients, which are 99% trainers, pre-2020 to now is drastic.
I mean, we could get into the social aspect of that, because you know how they're saying the younger generations have a lot less resiliency because of the way they were coddled as children. They don't know how to push themselves. There's that whole aspect there too.
Then there's also that coincides with COVID. There's many factors, but it's hard to pinpoint. But all I'm saying is I've seen a marked change, ridiculous change in the last 5 years that got me to readdress and reassess my volume, my programming of volume with the majority of my client. Now I'm way, way, way more laid back in terms of volume because I noticed people just couldn't recover. And not even just recovering from session to session, but within session, the ability to replicate a load for a set number of reps for a certain amount of sets as it disappeared. Like there's still a few, but overall the drop off is huge.
Well, and then work capacity is so tightly linked with aerobic capacity. For your, like, generally the higher your aerobic capacity, the higher your ability for greater work capacity. But it somewhat makes sense that following pretty much 10 years from like 2010, probably actually earlier, to about 2020, no one talked about aerobic work. It was all high intensity stuff. So the building of aerobic capacity was really downplayed for that time period. Now maybe that's somewhat manifesting.
I would think it would change a little bit because it is becoming cardio now is not so demonized as much in our industry.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see in 2 years' time, has people's work capacity increased again? Now, it gets a little funky because while their work capacity might increase, their outside training demands outside of the weight room are also increasing because people are now trying to balance more different types of physical activity. So they're doing their running, doing their cycling, doing their swimming, whatever their modality is. So at the end of the day, you still have a totality of recoverability. So those other types of activities are going to impede that to an extent. But it will be interesting to see if people's tolerance to higher volume gym work does come back in the upcoming years.
But it's tricky because there's too many factors to pinpoint one thing. But just on an observation standpoint, one, I find it odd that there's a lack of work capacity at a time where information is more prevalent than any other time in the history of the world. You can get knowledge from top level people,
bottom level people.
That's true. But
everywhere.
But you can get good information for free every day.
Yeah.
The quality of supplementation has improved drastically. Nutrition overall, I think people have a more balanced view of nutrition now than ever before. And it's still
it's available.
It's still there's still a lot of dogmatism in nutrition, but I think that it seems to me like there's the average person the average trainee has more of a mix. They don't fall as much for, I'm just carnivore, I'm just this, or I'm just that. Like I think there's more of a mixed
middle ground,
which I think is smart. But so that leads me to believe that, like, because the way I see it in my little world is the last few years there's been a huge resurgence in the old ass like heavy duty approach, like 1 to 2 sets, 1 exercise per body part, 3, like that whole thing that I can't stand. So that seems to growing and growing and growing, which this could if a lot of people went that route for a little bit,
especially from a young training age,
this on a purely training performance perspective, you're going to see a huge detraining in work capacity because there's absolutely zero work capacity component that type of training. So my question is, did people become weak in terms of work capacity because of that type of training, or because people have zero work capacity, they start liking that type of training?
I think that's probably what happened.
Well, to me, people are trying to be smarter than what physiology actually really is going to allow them to be. They're thinking, okay, so if we maximize the protein stimulus effect across a week for each muscle group, that is going to have the best training outcomes because that is all that matters in training. But in the end of the day, so like training always comes back to the SAID principle, specific adaptations to imposed demands. So if you have been imposing a certain level of demands on the musculature of the body, whatever way you want to put it, for a period of time, and you're starting to plateau, I was like, all right, why can't I keep improving? I'm training as hard as I ever had, and then you're like, all right, let's take a lower volume approach. Yeah, you're going to start improving again because you're now recovering at a higher rate than what you're taxing yourself. So there's going to be a runway for improved strength, improved hypertrophy, but it's a short runway because all of a sudden your body's going to downregulate its recovery to match the current imposed demand. So you're only going to adapt to that imposed demand. So all of a sudden, what do? Reduce volume more? Because that's a never winning situation if you just keep reducing volume. So at some stage you have to rebuild volume, and the only way to do that is increase your work capacity.
Yeah, and even personally, like growing up in this field, like starting in the mid-90s and learning from top coaches, or even being mentored by like guys like Charles Poliquin, like Larry Vinette, Nelson Ayotte, and goddamn, why am I blanking on his name? André Benoit. Jeez. Like it was always the message was pretty simple, like train hard, but the more hard training you can tolerate and recover from, the higher the peak of performance you can achieve. And they would always give example of like high-level athlete and their training and how many sets of high intensity they could actually do in a session, and on and on and on and on. And even myself, like in my 20s, like back in my late 20s when I reached most of my PRs, man, like I did sets and sets, like the 8x3s and the 10 and the 12 sets of squats and all that. I've done so much of that. And like being able to maintain a high load and then repeat and repeat, it's just like it's a trainable quality. But in my opinion, it's an important quality to have if you have high goals, because volume is an important part of the strength training equation. Intensity is extremely important, but so is volume. And even recent research shows some of the benefits of volume for either hypertrophy and strength. So it's, to me, to completely downplay one historically very important component of the strength training equation is bizarre to me.
And the one thing, like, I think people somewhat get wrong when they implement the higher volume training methods, or whatever way you want to put it, is you shouldn't expect to hit your PRs when you're in a high volume phase. Yeah. That is not the goal of the phase. The goal of the phase is to build capacity and build strength. And so when you do reduce the volume and try and peak, there's more potential. You're trying to build potential during those higher volume periods. It's not that these higher volume periods are directly you're going to have a PR right there because you're doing 12x3. No, if you're peaking on 12x3, you've done a shitty job with your lower volume stuff. So the 12x3 is there to create a higher potential. So when that volume's pulled away, so your recovery can outpace your stimulus, then you're your peak. So
yeah.
I know those are two things that you kind of brought up. For me, is something it kind of connects to work capacity, because I do find that loading is such a struggle for so many trainees. So I wonder if that also influenced the whole work capacity factor, because if you're not able to identify the load you should be using in those higher volume, you're going to have a drop off. So you're not actually completing the volume you're supposed to do. You're not building a larger work capacity. And then people are getting frustrated because they're missing those reps because they think they want to hit those PRs, but it's not the time to do it, because it's not every day you go into the gym that you're supposed to be hitting PRs every single time. And then if you go into more of those low volume now that are so popular, well, the chances of you selecting the wrong load are kind of really smaller.
But also it doesn't matter, because yes, there's less reps, but also you just need to go to failure. So
but that's what I'm saying.
Even if you're supposed to do
load.
6 reps and you undershot, you just do 9. That's it, right? So, but
do you think people would think that training to failure helps with work capacity? Do you think that could be a misunderstanding of people?
Working to failure might not be the best way to build work capacity, but if you're able to work to failure and repeat working to failure while maintaining the same output, that's a expression of work capacity. But you need to build it prior. So, I mean, I gave this example in class a few times, but the first time I consulted with Charles in 2001 or 2 or something like that, and I talked for 2 hours, and after explaining my workout and asking me questions about my training, like the first thing he told me is that I go too hard, too soon, too early in my training. And like a typical 5x5, I would do 5 hard reps, set 1, and then I would have this crazy drop off, right? So I was 21 years old at the time. So at that time, I did not have the work capacity to be able to do constant loading at maximal voluntary contraction for 5 sets and having no drop off. I didn't have that work capacity. So he told me, whoa, like, you got to chill a little bit. Like, you got to pace yourself so that your average load across all 5 sets is fairly high. So you're building a capacity to repeat high intensity effort, but don't kill yourself right off the bat. Like, you're trying to build work capacity. So that's why we teach step loading. Yeah. 5 sets of step loading as a built-in 5% buffer. So there is a wiggle room. Like, so you have 1 set at a peak load, and then you have wiggle room to perfect skills or to build work capacity and on and on. But eventually, back in my days, like, the workouts with multiple sets was common, especially like in accumulation phases or GPP type phases, because that's the thing too. We're not saying that you need to drive volume like all the time in a linear fashion. That's why we have periodization. Yeah. But you need to build it. But when you're building it, you need to pace yourself, build that work capacity. And then when you go into an intensification phase, then you're trying to see if you can repeat high intensities multiple times. And if you can do that, then the upsides are way greater in terms of, at least in terms of strength development.
I think you're right, though, that most people, especially even trainers, they're really not good at loading. So they're not good at step loading. Like, they're always, like you were when you were 21, but you learned that lesson where they just try to go too hard. So if they really respect that, the step loading, 10% intensity spread, or even if they're doing constant loading to start, give themselves a little buffer and then build from week to week. I think maybe ego gets in there too much and then they try to lift too much. But you have conversations with people who aren't trainers, they've never heard of that concept.
Yeah, but even if you look at some the powerlifting programs, the more well-known ones, they're doing, if say it's 5x5 in a program, it could be prescribed at 70%. Yeah, that would be a very normal prescription. So it really shows that they're trying to build that volume, build that capacity to withstand that amount of volume, and slowly over time they'll edge up the intensity. But it's very rare that they bring their higher volume work to failure. It's mostly done submaximal, and you just build the capacity, build your potential so you've higher potential to express closer to the peak.
Yeah, but so like in a team sports off season, like a typical 12-week off season, like the general preparation phase is all about building work capacity. And with these athletes, because you have a short time frame, like you basically want your GPP to be so high in volume that by the time you switch to your SPP, the athlete is kind of wiped. And Charles and André Benoit always used to talk about, like, by the time they got to the end of the GPP phase, they were sitting, getting ready, waiting for Charles to get through the session. Like I'm talking about, like the bobsleigh luge team and stuff for Team Canada. They were waiting for Charles, and they were shaking. Like that's the state of mind they were at that point in time. Like their fatigue level was so high that their nervous system was shut. But it might sound stupid, but that goes with Zatiorski's fitness fatigue paradigm. And like you explained a few podcasts ago, the cool thing about this is fatigue will always dissipate faster than preparedness. So now you've built your GPP, you drove volume, you've built a huge amount of work capacity, but you're a little shot. But what's going to happen is as you drop volume and you move into your SPP, now after a few days or a few weeks, depending on the level of training, now fatigue will dissipate, and now you'll see this crazy overcompensation in output and strength. So now, if you're doing like 5x5, like a standard simple rep scheme, you're not only are you going to be able to have a higher peak, but you're going to be able to repeat a higher peak weight more often during the session, during the week, to generate even more strength.
And this is slightly off topic, but just since you brought it up, this is also why you shouldn't do your SPP testing after GPP, because you're going to be, like, if you've done it right, the athletes are going to be shot and their recovery is not going to be high enough to give you a decent description of where they're actually at and what they need to address.
Yeah, that's true, because it's not uncommon to, let's say you were to measure a vertical jump pre off-season training, and then you measure vertical jump post GPP. It's not uncommon to have a drop. Yeah. But that's why you're almost better off not testing it. So that the athlete doesn't freak out. Yeah. But it's going to happen more often than not because of the built-in fatigue. But the whole workload and recovery and fatigue component is an important part of training. Don't shy away from it. It's fine. And not only will it make you a better trainee, a more efficient at exercise technique, because it gives you more rehearsal, more intermuscular coordination, building opportunities, and on, but it also allows you by default, which is not a thing to take lightly, it allows you to better maintain body composition.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and man, like I have this online client, like I've been training him for a long time. And when long, I'm talking 12 years. And I don't know, he's mid-30s, I would say, mid-30s. This dude, like a low volume phase is like 6x6. Like that's low volume for him. But it's years and years of training. Now he thrives on volume. He does really, really well. But guess what? That dude is single digit year round. Yeah. Because he's able to deal with that, and it's not that amount of volume to him. It's not a exaggerated stressor, so he can deal with it. So,
what do you like? So what would be kind of the numbers that would make something, just so viewers kind of understand, like what a program would be when it's
high volume,
or low volume? Like what do we consider low volume?
Okay, so I'll give you a good example. So we. In our resource, we have this product where we have 3 periodization models, if you want. But anyways, they're intensity models. Yeah. and we have volume associated to it. We have a low, medium, and high. In the past, so pre-2020, honestly, I'd say that easily 85% of my clients were on the moderate volume, medium volume, which is a decent amount of volume. But now, and I'm not kidding, about 60 to 70% of my clients now are on the low volume. That's all like see they can handle. So now medium volume would be like a typical, let's say, absolute strength macro, like an accumulation phase would fall between like 40 to 50 reps. Like when we're talking about the sets times the reps for the A series. So let's say 5x8, for example, could be an example of a moderate volume accumulation phase for absolute strength. Yep. Whereas the intensification phase would be like
5x6,
like 30 rep, or 5x5, 25 reps. That would be like medium volume. But now, like we're talking about more like an accumulation phase for absolute strength, like closer to
4x8.
Yeah, 4x8. 4x8 would be a good example. 4x5 for an intensification phase. Yeah. So I know on paper like this, it doesn't seem like much.
It's one set less, but it makes a difference.
But it makes a huge difference over the course of a training week, a mesocycle, and then a macrocycle. But then it also makes a huge difference. And that's also why, in my opinion, the strength performance gains that I see from macro to macro are not as drastic as what I used to see.
And then one thing when it comes to work capacity, I think people rush too quickly to lower their volume instead of using other strategies, because we've got other periodization models. So like once we use a weekly or daily undulating model, which is factoring in more fluctuations in our or in our volumes and intensities across the week or across multiple weeks, that's going to help mitigate recovery issues. So it's going to help you train at a higher total volume across the macro while still allowing for recovery compared to a phase undulation model. We can manipulate so many things. We can manipulate exercise selection, so we can choose exercises that have slightly lower load potential but will allow you to complete the totality of the volume, and then slowly increase the load potential of those exercises, which will inherently increase your work capacity over the course of the macro cycle. So there is other manipulations you can make outside of just lowering your volume straight away.
Yeah, and also I want to make sure there's no misunderstanding. We're not saying that volume trumps everything and that we believe in junk volume. That's not what we're saying. You still need to train with intent. You need to train with enough intensity. Intensity is an important driver, but don't abandon volume because somehow you think that volume has no impact. So then if that has no impact, screw this, I'm not going to bother doing more sets. To me, it's a mistake. So train hard to your recovery level, but if you notice that as soon as you do too much volume, you crash and burn and you can't recover, it doesn't mean, okay, well, then I shouldn't do volume. Yeah. It just means that, well, maybe I have poor volume and maybe I need to do something about it, which means, okay, lower your output a little bit, get that extra set in, try to cope with that extra set, try to recover from that extra set. Eventually you will. Now you have a training effect. Now you have more work capacity. So now you can handle the heavier stuff easier and have a higher peak. So it's the pure definition of what training is.
Yeah.
Sorry,
go ahead.
For myself, just increasing my rest period makes a big difference. Like I could still do all this. Obviously, we still want to keep like the training within like an hour and stuff. But like, would there be a good benefit to maybe extending the training a little bit so that you can still get all the volume, but now you're just allowing a little bit more rest for the individual at that time until they build that work capacity, and then you can start.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for an intensification phase, that would be fine. It's just that you have to be careful on what is the goal of the mesocycle, the goal of the phase. Because if for example, one of the phase you're doing, you're really slanting the bias more towards metabolic adaptations, then you have to be careful to not extend the rest, because now you're impeding on the metabolic development of what you're trying to do. But if you're in an intensification phase where intensity, no matter what, is the main driver, and you've got to the point where you have a certain amount of sets, so let's say 8 sets, that you're doing on your main lift, at that point, then it's not a problem to extend your rest period, even if your training lasts 75 to 90 minutes, because at this point, it's not the same amount of systemic damage on the central nervous system or the DHA cortisol ratio, and on and on and on. So it won't affect it as bad. It's the same example with Olympic weightlifters. You know, like they do a set of 3 reps at 70% of their 1 RM, then they rest for 5 minutes. Their workout might last 2 hours, but it's not like they had that because they hit the 60-minute, now their CNS is inefficient. Yeah. It's just that their style of training, it's like gymnasts too, it's the same thing. Gymnasts can train for a long time because they take ample rest. So yeah, that would be a good strategy, but to me it would depend on what's the actual goal of the meso.
Mm-hmm. But it's why, like, if we then introduce the concept of mesocycle loading, how you could use ascending mesocycle loading to boost work capacity in the accumulation phase. Because, okay, we know we're going to be strict with the rest periods because the goal of this phase is more of a metabolic adaptation. Yes. But since we're going to start with our lowest volume, it's not that demanding. And then the next week, we're adding a bit of volume, but now make sure you maintain that rest period so it's a little bit more of a stressor. The last week of the phase, more volume again, maintain the rest period, more of a stressor. And it's just one way you can manipulate another variable to push the adaptation or coax the adaptation instead of forcing it. So, like, there's loads of tools that we have that we can use to make all this work.
But me, like, you know, like, in the late 80s and 90s and early 2000 and Charles and all, like, man, I was brought up in this world, like, doing like giant sets and tri sets and GBC this and like, so to me, volume, it's always been a part of the equation.
It's funny. I just thought about how, remember when we all reps were always assigned a range. So if it was 6, you had 4 to 6 or 3 to 5, 8 to 10. And I remember when we wiped that out because we were sick and tired of people being okay if they didn't hit the reps because they hit that range. So it kind of tied in because we were like, we don't want people to aim for the lower amount of reps. We want them to hit the reps on every set.
I think that's also the transition between like training people in person and then online, because like in person, your clients, like you would choose the weight. You would push them to work faster, to do all the volume. But now when people are training by themselves, like they don't have that extra, motivation to get it done. And then they just take.
Well, I see it all the time on the Tempo Town and Intensity on Train Aerobic. So those are like some of our Train Aerobic programs. And, like on the coaches dashboard or whatever it's called, like you see everybody's workouts. Mm-hmm. And like Porik runs these sessions, but so let's say the rep scheme is 6x6, let's say. Yep. I see it all the time. 6x6 scratched, and then it's like 6x3.
Yeah. Or 3x6.
3x6. It's funny. Like just people like even if they're paying for a program and it's written on the sheet, they still, I want to use more weight. Screw 6 reps. I'm doing 3 today. Okay, well, that was not the goal of the program.
Value of in-person training.
But it can be used, like work capacity is just one thing you have to know where the client is so you can further individualize the program, like everything we've been talking about. And I know we were just yesterday looking at the body composition slides, and those block structures and the manipulations of that really goes into identifying what that client needs to be able to best complete the training. And I can't remember because it's the fixed, variable, and integrated.
The blocks.
The blocks, right? Yeah. So I know, because when we were talking about it, we both respond very differently to the different, like whether it's an intensification or accumulation phase. So identifying which one of those best suits the client for them to be able to recover from the training. So that goes back to what you're saying, whether it's like the
mesocycle loading.
Yeah, which one you're selecting.
Yeah, if we can manipulate how the training volume is presented over the course of a mesocycle to either coax more work capacity, allow for a higher peak with a somewhat of a step load of mesocycle loading, because we're going to build volume then drop off to allow for a higher peak under less fatigue, or even like a descending or peaking sort of mesocycle that you're starting with the highest load and moving towards the lowest. So so like there's loads of ways we can manipulate it. In the body composition, we manipulate it in terms of trying to build more total volume load. Yep. But it's a manipulation of both an accumulation and intensification within the same weekly structure, so that we're balancing the stressors of both, and when one's getting stressed, the other one's getting deloaded, and then vice versa, so that there's a constant progression in our volume load over time. So it's a really good way to build work capacity. Like, it'd be a really good system if someone lack work capacity, to start them on a low volume phase of that and then slowly build throughout the 12 weeks.
You can still be like an intermediate trainee, advanced trainee with poor work capacity. Like, it's just something you can improve.
Yeah. And the problem with work capacity as well is, to a certain extent, absolute strength and relative strength to a slightly lesser degree, but absolute strength is going to somewhat impede your work capacity. If you can squat 800 pounds, the chances of you doing a lot of volume with that type of load is very slight. But does it mean you couldn't do a shit ton of volume at sub-maximal loads? No. But your totality of volume is going to be less than someone who's only squatting 200 pounds, no matter what your relative strength is. So it's a slippery slope. It's not a cut and dry one there.
Yeah. So would we consider also, I know back in the day people were, well, not back in the day, but trainers still like to say, oh, I'm fast twitch, so I can't I can't do a lot of volume. I'm slow twitch. So if you're more in endurance like type of athlete, then you'll have better work capacity.
Yes and no. Like, you're gonna have, because what you're saying is right. That's what a lot of coaches, trainees say about themselves when they consider themselves fast twitch. But personally, I think it's bullshit, because I think that fast twitch, all it does is it reduces your capacity to produce reps within a set. Okay, but there's really, really fast twitch people that can do multiple sets of really, really heavy with no drop off, assuming they have a complete recovery in between sets. Like the whole Piros Dimas, 21 sets of 3 on front squat at 90% of 1 RM in one session.
So it still comes down to loading.
The dude was not slow twitch.
Yeah, and recovery.
Yeah, like it's like no matter where you fall into the spectrum, you can improve that capacity. Yeah. Someone who's more slow twitch probably has a higher overall potential for work capacity, but doesn't mean fast twitch people can have a very high work capacity as well over the course of multiple sets. It just mightn't be within, like, they're not going to do it with sets of 12.
Like, they're gonna suck on a giant set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we're like, to us, like, what we're saying is work capacity. What I mean is, I'm not just saying like, can you do 5 sets of giant sets and have a little drop off? That's not what I'm talking. What we're necessarily talking about. It's like, whatever your program is, that your accumulation and intensification, can you at a high level be on the high end of moderate to high volume and still be performing, not have crazy drop off, and not being sore for months, and not like, completely fried from it. Because, like, for example, like, I have a client, like, last week, the protocol was very, very basic. It was 5x5 A series. It was 3x8 B series, and it was 2x10 C series. Okay. The 5 sets were 5, 3, 2, 2. Did not do the last set. Okay. So now 5, 3, 2, 2. So that's 8, 10. That's 12 repetitions. Yeah. The goal was 25 reps of volume. Okay. At a peak load of 85% of 1 RM, with a average load at 80% of 1 RM. That was the goal. 12 reps performed. Okay. The 3 sets, 2 sets performed. The 2 sets, 0 sets performed.
Yeah.
And I asked, it was not because of a lack of time. The person was just white.
But it was loading. Like, it comes down to loading. If they had loaded the...
but I'm sorry, but even if you're somewhat well trained and you have some micronutrients in your bloodstream and cells, there's no way that doing set 1 for 5, 1 set of 5, wipes you out so much.
But what if it was like, that 5th rep was like fucking took 20 seconds to push?
Maybe,
you know what I mean?
yeah. But maybe. But I highly doubt that was the case. So is it true? But here, like, it's a legit question. So is it truly complete, pure lack of work capacity because there's zero like aerobic base whatsoever? Yeah. There's the zero capillaries, mitochondria are trash. Nutrition is complete trash. No protein, 0 carb on the carnivore. I don't like. What is it?
They need a little alpha GPC.
or is it straight up lack of mental drive and motivation? And
to me it's a capacity issue. Like, because no one go like. Yes, it could. No, I'm sure loading definitely comes into it. Yeah, there's no doubt that loading came into that situation, but it doesn't mean it was it still shouldn't have wiped you out that badly.
Yeah,
because like that's a ridiculous loading situation if that's the case. But there has to be an ability, like no matter what, no matter how hard that set of 5 was, there shouldn't have been that level of drop off within 5 sets. Like it's just a.
And then you can correct yourself too. Like if your drop off, you go from 5 to 3, then on the 3rd set, decrease the weight so that you can stick to, can get back to 5
No,
reps.
absolutely. Because so with the scenario, there was like 2 things you could do, right? Yeah. So you could be like, oh, okay, well now let's just do 1 set of 5 or 2 sets of 5. Let's just do 1 or 2 sets in the B series, and let's just do 1 set in okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you could do that, but to me that'd be
you're not
pointless.
Anything, yeah.
Or you can be like, okay, I don't care that I said that your peak set should be at 85% of your 1 RM. I don't care now. I want your peak set to be at 75% of your 1 RM, and we're going to train with a really big buffer, like a 15% buffer.
Yeah.
And then build.
And then just build, like do that 5 sets. Because I mean, come on, because why does volume have somewhat of an importance for strength development? Like Porg did an entire presentation on that.
Yeah, intramuscular coordination.
You need to build intermuscular coordination up to a certain point, and then once you're really advanced, guess what you need to do again? Build more intermuscular coordination again, but you cannot build true intermuscular coordination if, 1, you're doing bullshit exercise on machines all the time, and you're doing 1 set to failure, and that's all you're doing. Yeah, there's 0 intermuscular coordination being built, so there's no strength, there's no skill of strength being built. So I'd rather see people, especially in accumulation phase, go lighter. Mm-hmm. Build your tolerance to that volume, so you have somewhat of a volume base. It has nothing to do with it, but we could associate this to building an aerobic base to leverage energy system in the future. So do that. get that volume in it. We're not even talking about extreme volume. I'm just talking about normal strength training volume.
Yeah, because like in that situation, what I would have recommended was, all right, they did 5 reps. They said that was a 5 RM. They are not going to repeat that effort. Okay, that's fine. Let's reduce the load by 10% and we'll just do the next 4 sets at that their load. And we know, okay, the total average load is not where we want it to be. You got the peak load because you hit your 5 RM. Fine, not ideal because you didn't set one, but we know if we go 10% lighter, you're definitely going to be able to get your volume in, and your average load is going to be within the range that it wouldn't have been that big a deal if that had been your average load with a step loading anyway.
The only thing I would say to that approach, though, although it would work with somebody who's more advanced, the novice.
Oh yeah.
The problem with that is if they reach their peak load, and it's a hard peak load on set 1, their nervous system ability to have high quality intermuscular coordination learning after is very bad.
No, I'd agree with that.
So like on the first, if the first workout they do that, you do 5, it's an all out, you decrease by 10. Well, then the next training they should start at that lower weight and then build from there, so that they can have that.
Well, you just think
like you would adjust, like you wouldn't start with that same 5 RM weight. You would adjust the next time.
You adjust to where you want your peak set to be for that session, and then work backwards.
Yeah. Like 5 sets, it's easy because it's a built-in 10% step load.
Yep.
So we know that within the gym, volume, completing your training session correctly. So, and I know you both brought it up, like building aerobic base. So is there something specific that you would want, like say someone's listening and they're realizing their work capacity is low right now? What outside of the training driving improving work capacity, what would be steps that they can take outside of the training?
Well, I mean, like Porrick, I didn't want to cut you, but what like Porrick was saying, like there's a lot of lifestyle component. So if there's a lot of family stress or work stress or sleep is really bad or nutrition is poor, it's 1-2 meals a day, the calories are really low, there's no carbohydrates, protein is low, there's a lack of healthy fats in the diet, there's no supplementation for a bad diet, so micronutrient status is low. All of this will absolutely kill any type of work capacity. So beyond, like for us, it's easy because we're always thinking and looking at the training, but before you even address the training, you need to make sure that with your client, you're covering these bases, because these are bases as a human being that you need to cover before even really digging deep into the training part.
Yeah. And like building an aerobic base, like with any sort of aerobic means, will help, but it won't be as beneficial as the specific work of doing the resistance training itself, because the adaptations are so highly specific to the muscles and the recruitment patterns. So like within the training, you could just make sure you're backing off slightly further than you would normally. Like you're not hitting those high end peak loads, but you're getting your full volume in, you're doing it within the sign rest periods, and you're just sort of coaxing your body to get more and more used to completing this high volume, which if your pure goal is to increase work capacity in a resistance training matter, that is that'll be the most important thing you can do on a training wise. Very supplemental to that would just be going out and increasing your aerobic capacity, because it's going to upregulate the system, but it's not going to upregulate the very specific motor units and capillaries
within their training.
Yeah, so it's not going to have as direct a carryover.
I mean, listen, like I'm not going to be shy on the words here, but like one unfortunate part of me and Alex having Charles Poliquin as a mentor since the mid-90s is we listened to him on everything, which meant that we didn't do any type of cardiovascular, like even anaerobic work was outside of weight training was really low, but aerobic work was zero. Like it was viewed as you do this, you're going to lose muscle. Adrenal stress, cortisol will skyrocket, blah, blah. Again, that was complete.
Remember the one where if you walked on a treadmill, it would make you insulin resistant?
Yeah, because of dirty electricity, all that, whatever. So all these things, okay? So didn't do it, okay? Now, of course, what did it mean? Like blood lipids were whack, my blood pressure was off, like everything was whack, right? So, so when I'm like, okay.
So things you've learned along the way.
Things I've learned along the way. So now with James Laval and stuff. So now, okay, Steph, you need to do aerobic work. So now I'm doing aerobic work.
For a few years now.
Yeah, it's been a few years. Well, like my vascularity, like it's ridiculous.
Benefits.
My vascularity has like improved 5-fold. But what does it mean though? It means that I'm feeding
more nutrients to the muscle.
Yeah, I'm getting more nutrients to the muscle. I'm clearing out waste product more easily. My recovery in between sessions is better. My ability to tolerate carbohydrate is much higher because, again, following Charles, 2 licks of a dried prune, less than 50 grams. If you're not 10% body fat, then you never reached 10%, so you got tired, so then you cheated for a week, so then, oh shit, now I'm fat again, so I need to go low carb again. So then you're on a fake low carb for like 5 years straight because you're cheating all the time because you can reach your goal. So now you become super inefficient at fat oxidation, and you can't process carbohydrates for shit because the only time you have them is through crap carbs like 2 days per month. Yeah. So you know, like, so if you combine a good aerobic base with proper balanced nutrition, and now
basic supplements,
like lipid profile actually improves, like hemoglobin A1C actually improves, blah blah. Oh, now I can do more volume in the weight room. Oh, the strength improves. My ability to feel good doing my movement improves because now I can do more sets of squat and get to actually learn the grooving much better.
Your density improves massively. Like not density
that's true.
In muscle mass. I mean density in how much volume you can do in a unit of time. Yeah. But yeah, like because your ability to have repeated efforts with very minimal rest periods pretty much went through the roof in the last couple of years.
Yeah, because remember when you moved to Florida in 22 and we started training together in the beginning, like you blasted me really quick with strength, but I remember at first it was like, God damn, Steph, you train so fast.
Yeah. I still train fast. Steph trains the fastest and I train the slowest.
Pork and I are pretty on it with what it should take us for this session.
I needed a little more time.
Yeah. But anyway, so to me, like, I mean, I've learned it. I've been through it. I've seen the dark side of zero aerobic and everything is shit. And then I've seen the brighter side of doing more aerobic work.
Balanced approach.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. It's like the older you get, the more you realize that
you become more
that balance is just it's where the answer is most of, like
wisdom as you get older.
When in doubt, go for the balance.
Yeah, with so much.
But in everything, right? Yeah. Like it's really like the bell-shaped curve, like in terms of fitness. Like the ones who do the least and the ones who do the most are the unhealthiest in terms of, I mean, everything. And then somewhere in the middle is where you get the most benefit.
But that being said, though, because yesterday, like a student, like I did a consult with a student, and we're talking about volume prescription. But at the end of the day, you're starting with a new client. Start with low volume.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not like
don't trash them right away.
It's a question of being logical and understanding the training process. So you've never done anything. You've never trained. You just need a stimulus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's use a low volume model, milk that as much as you can. There will be a positive training response. Eventually, there's going to be a plateau, and the plateau won't be because of lack of intensity. It's going to be because of a lack of either volume, frequency, whatever, which are all related. Mm-hmm. So then bump up either the frequency or the volume. Then
build.
Gauge, build, and eventually there's going to be another plateau. So at that point, you reassess and reevaluate.
Yeah,
you know what? Because like me, 5% of my clients are on high volume and they're doing fine. They're doing well on high volume. They thrive on it. But we got to that point.
Yeah, a lot of those are the people that have been with you the longest type of thing. Like you've built them up.
Whereas other people that reaches the high level of moderate volume, if they plateau, sometimes these people, I don't necessarily go right away to more volume. I'll instead, like Pork was saying, I'll go to a reorganization, either the periodization model, the microcycle structure, and or the session structure to try to push further adaptation without necessarily going on the volume route. And this is mostly with people that I feel they're doing a decent amount of volume, being in the high range of moderate, but they're really, really, really strong already.
Yeah.
That you feel that, okay, well, now as a coach, I need to make a decision. Do I go high volume and risk trashing them with more work at high loads and having fucked up joints? Or do we play the game of reorganizing things to boost the stimulus while still having moderate volume?
Like this is somewhat what I was saying about absolute strength. Like it does come into the equation. Not everyone is in the same position to, all right, they're plateauing, more volume is the right answer. No, you have to assess the full person and their full ability, because like if someone truly is very strong, high volume's gonna toast them very quickly. Yeah. So,
but I would be curious though, honestly. Mm-hmm. Because in my formative years in the weight room in my 20s, I trained with a training partner. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I wonder if some people's lack of work capacity isn't masked by lack of
motivation.
Yeah, but it's like having your trainer. It's like you have someone that pushes you, that you're like, you have to keep up with. Like when I trained with Kelsey, I definitely did more sets than when I trained by myself.
They were a lot faster.
But like when I still lived in Montreal, like every morning, 8 a.m., like I would have a client at 6, would have a client at 7 or whatever. Then eventually I had enough clients that I didn't need to train anybody at 6 or 7, so I would get to the gym at 8. But every day, 8 a.m. sharp, JM, like Jean-Marie Lapointe, one of my buddies back in Montreal, would meet up and we'd train together.
And he's a work capacity.
He's the dude's a rower, is like an aerobic beast, but he's also strong, especially for reps. Mm-hmm. Like he was a very great partner for me to have because we're so different. Yeah. And in the the higher reps we'd go and the more isolation we'd go, the more he'd kill me. And then the lower reps and the more compound we'll go, the more I'd kill him. So it was good because he was great at what I sucked and I was good at what he was not as good at. But that to me like really, really pushed me because I'm this quote unquote fast twitch guy who played football and martial arts with a cardio dude, and I'm trying to follow him. So that was motivating. That forced me to push the envelope. Then when I moved to the US and all that kind of stuff, now I was training with like Tony and Perry and Brian and you and Sarah and like all these people. So then it was motivating. Yeah.
Good time.
To wrap up this episode, I know everyone keeps not picking on Alex, but calling out Alex on her new program she's doing. Yes. And this is something that I wanted to discuss because it's always specific when we make adjustments to a program. So that's what people really need to understand with, and we always say we break the rules, we change things. It's always for the client specifically. And with you, Alex, currently in your program, so the biggest change is you're no longer doing 4 strength training sessions. You're doing 2 strength training sessions, but then 2 conditioning strongman style workouts. Yeah. So one thing for me, like it makes sense in the sense where you've been training so long, you do maintain your muscle easily. That's not like a difficult, and strength, like always. That's not like the biggest issue for you. So I know it kind of brought up in the continuum, someone asked how it's going, but it was kind of like 2 days in to how it's going type of thing. So is this week 2 or is
this is week 2?
This is week 2.
Yeah.
So now you're...
I've done a full week.
Yeah,
I'm like
halfway through.
Yeah.
So overall, what have been kind of your biggest observations for yourself so far?
I mean, surprisingly, I was still really sore. I still got really sore.
Well, it's different movements, though.
From
yeah.
the conditioning.
It's the first time you've done strongman stuff in a long time.
In a long time. But I think like overall, I feel like my recovery is a little bit better. I feel like, and even just moving, I'm very... Like I'm stiff, but I'm flexible. Like it's a really weird combination. But I feel like I walk like really, because you know when we weight train, we always do things in the sagittal plane, and we don't move much. So just even that, I feel like my mobility and my looseness has improved.
That's the thing, because you're flexible.
I'm flexible,
but you just lost mobility.
Yeah.
We were having that discussion the other night.
Yeah. And now you're regaining some of that mobility, but because you've always been flexible. Like Alex can do a seated, good morning, wide stance, straight leg, feet dorsiflex, and still touch the bench with her torso. I mean, that's flexible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like even I've been working on my flexibility, mobility, but like just doing it, faster through movement and all that stuff. I mean, it definitely feels better. And even yesterday when I did the conditioning, I haven't told Steph yet, but I was able to decrease my rest period because, I mean, there's only so much faster I can go with certain movements. So what I did, instead of doing 4 minutes rest, I was able to do 3 minutes rest, and I was still able to maintain the speed and the distance and stuff that I was doing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So I'm excited. So far so good.
At the end of the day, it is only week 2. So we'll know more in a couple of weeks.
But it will be interesting just to see kind of, because for you, you're always, it's a pain management thing with issues that you have, but it's also just like getting that mobility, avoiding anything causing any issues, and also building and maintaining your physique at the point you want it to be.
And it's fatigue management. So I've been wanting to do conditioning, and unfortunately I still haven't done cardio, but anyways, that's the next step. But it was a good way to maintain my training volume. Yeah. But then I just switched it up to, removing 2 of the weight training and then
because that's the thing that I want to make sure people understand, because I've seen a few comments but I don't think they get
the true reasoning.
True reasoning. Yeah. Because everybody knows I'm a huge proponent of 4 times a week strength training. But 4 times a week...
How do you feel about 2 times a week?
Not great. But four times a week strength training to build the highest level.
Yeah.
So then the comments are like, but aren't you going to... But what they need to understand, Alex has been training at a high level for like 30 years. Yeah. Alex, I remember like the first time Alex tested, I tested her. We're talking about like 1999. First time ever she does a 1RM bench press. 185 pounds 1RM bench press on a 40x0 tempo at a body weight at that time, I'm guessing 135-ish. So she's strong. She's still strong. She still has a lot of muscle mass. So for her to try to make her body feel better, decrease some of the inflammation, aches and pains, and increase her mobility, well, I'm not going to add cardio and strongman conditioning on top of 4 strength. Like, I'm just going to compound the issues. Yeah. So something has to go. Well, for me, it's easy for her to be like, well, you know what can go actually? The strength training, because it's part of you now, like it's in you.
But you need so much less volume
to maintain.
Yeah. That's what people need to get their head around.
That's like, my biggest pain point now.
Yeah, like it's really easy to maintain when you've built a solid base. Yeah. And I mean a solid base, not 12 weeks. But once you've built that base, you can maintain with so much less volume than it took to build it. Yeah. So, all right, you can maintain this while you're working on something else, no problem. That's
because that's all we're trying to do with her at this point. Yeah. All I want is, don't keep training because you like it. But all I want is for you to maintain your mass and strength and movement efficiency. So you're doing 2 full body workouts, not a lot of fluff.
Not GBC.
Not GBCs, like
full
strength
body
workout.
Yeah.
Then we're adding conditioning in different planes of motion with different velocities. That's why you have animal walks. That's why you have carries. That's why you have lifts. That's why you have drags. So we have different patterns, different velocities. So now your body is moving ways it's not used to move, because as much as I love strength training, I say it all the time, it's so unidimensional in terms of movement.
Yeah.
So for her, it's better. Now she's going to feel a little bit better. So now eventually she's going to be like, okay, now I can add like zone 2 cardio, for example, which is not stressful. But now she's going to add more volume to her training week, but it's actually going to help the entire system.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll keep you updated.
We'll keep you updated.
But I think, but if there was one final word for people, is like, don't fall into the trap of the whole, it's only intensity, volume doesn't mean shit. It means a lot. And like everything in the world of fitness, whatever pendulum
It swings towards.
we're in right now, it's going to swing some back. It's the other way around in a few years. And then you're going to be shifted to the, no, just be normal. Like just
be normal.
Stay in the middle, stick to what has been proven for decades and decades of working, instead of falling for every freaking bullshit that comes out all the time.
Everything we talk about is always such a long-term approach, and what long-term success takes is consistency. So if you're constantly changing what you're doing and how you're doing it, you're not on a long-term plan. You're constantly just chasing these little wins.
You don't want to be on that pendulum, to go somewhere in the middle.
And then work capacity. It seems like people even have lack of work capacity at work. Now I keep seeing things like I have a break every 12 minutes because the brain needs. Jesus Christ.
We'll leave it on that note. And it's hot as shit in here.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.